put my arm or our hand under the light,
It's like a little better for me.
Yeah, our skin kind of contrasted. All right, so Jason's here, Tom's here, Amber's somewhere back there.
in the darkness.
Amber's in the darkness. This is the hard episode to do. Hold on, let me see if I can get that camera a little better here. Oh, this is just the best. You're watching me finger the lens a little.
I'm sure you can edit it out, but you won't.
No, we won't. We we very rarely edit much of these videos, to be brutally honest, unless there's like a real problem with them.
Right.
Just because there's that natural feel, like you're kind of in the car with us.
Yeah, so you're really here. You're really.
That was actually Mr. Mass's comment on our video.
Oh, sweet.
All right, so it's post tournament. Let's do the quick wrap up.
Yeah.
I ended up 3-2. Missed to cut the top 8 on the Swiss. It was 5 rounds of Swiss, and yeah, it really came down to I missed one deciding attack at the end of the game, and it didn't go for me on the last round. My points weren't high enough to make the top 8, and boom, that was it for me. Mr. Tom made the top 8.
I did. I went 4-1 in Swiss. Lost to Devin, who was the ultimate winner, or the eventual winner. And that got me into top 8, whereupon I won a match against Emily, our second one of the day of the pairing of she and I. And then I lost to Jay in a real heartbreaker. Just things didn't go my way when they needed to, and I fed into his plan a little bit from the perspective that, you know, he made Mangog really hard to kill, and then I poured a lot of resources into trying to kill him anyway, when I really should have just kind of stayed back, focused, maybe bring brought in an ID character, try to take a route, not give an opportunity for retaliation, and try to play the long game. So, good, important learning lesson. I think it's a good team, and in the end I got 3rd, so yeah, good.
All right, Amber. Well, the darkness.
Yeah.
Amber's gonna talk from the darkness.
To, focus on me. I went 2 and 3. Basically, when we hit round 4, and I needed a win to have to get me into that, I can make it into the top 8. I went up against a full point Unimine and did not win. But then I also was kind of a dick about it, because I'm like, well, if you're gonna be point denial, I'll be point denial. And I didn't go aggressive against him either. He wasn't aggressive against me, so all he did was score my Groot. And I'm like, all right, have fun with 20 points with your win.
I mean, yeah. So, just a quick rundown. I was running I was running my Scientists and Iron Man team, which I'm probably going to ride until rotation. I don't know how many more tournaments I have until rotation at this point, but that's kind of what I'm going on. Tom, you're running...
I'm running a soldier team +7. It's basically the same as what PJ has been playing recently. PJ and I kind of both came by that notion, since the core of it, which is Phil Coulson carries Sam Cap and 3 foot elites, that kind of wrote itself, and then an Ameridroid, and then I wasn't sure what to do with the rest, and then I saw PJ had a second Ameridroid. I liked the extra theme from that, so I thought it was as good a call as anything. And our ID setup is different. He's got 2 student henchmen, I have 1. We both used the Iceberg Lounge map bonus, which again we both kind of seem to have happened on our own. So great minds think alike, but I'm sure that in the long run people will just call it PJ's team and assume I net decked it.
All right, and Amber?
I'm running the Cosmic theme Starro, Star Fox, Lockjaw, Groot.
Yeah,
ID.
very much like Dan Powell's team from Rock World Cup.
Yes.
Yeah. I was lazy when I built it for her. All right, so we have one more question left from the internet. Then we have a topic to discuss. You know, it's kind of the hot topic right now, courtesy of MajesticCCG.com.
And also Hot Topic.
Did Hot Topic provide it?
Yeah, Hot Topic's really into Hero Clicks now.
All right, cool. I mean, they were at one point. They had the movie sets and whatnot.
Really?
Yeah. So you know, you could grab your Villain Club or Bullet Club T-shirt and your one like Iron Man 3 Hero Click.
Weird.
Yeah.
That was probably already open.
Oh yeah.
It's so Hot Topic. Yawn. Riveting content as I'm falling asleep.
Yeah, I know. Tom's the driver. What the hell? Give this man a Red Bull.
One yawn does not a falling asleep make.
I was referring to me. I need a Red Bull.
Oh my God, he's got it in his pocket. That is so.
I had pulled it out of my bag earlier. That's not embarrassing.
It's just all I saw was you say one Red Bull. Your hand kind of disappears next to your ass, and then suddenly there's a Red Bull. Like that is a Jason Collins moment.
Oh yeah. If you need need a Red Bull, I probably got one on my person.
That's very true. You wear them like you've got like a 90s era. What was the artist that put pouches on everybody?
Liefeld. Rob Liefeld.
Yeah, you've got like a Rob Liefeld belt and it's just Red Bulls.
pouches of Red Bull. In fact, it is my 24-pack abs that Rob Liefeld likes to draw on me too. Also full of Red Bulls. Actually, they're not actually abs.
All right, where are we at?
All right, we are actually on the last question from the internet.
Last question
And
on the internet.
it's a three-parter. Very last question the internet ever has. The internet has no more questions, just answers, and they're all wrong. All right, so it's a three-part question. Which game element that you are glad was retired, you wish was still in play, and you would like to see coming? So, and this actually isn't a Malcolm Rush question, oddly enough. So,
Interesting.
so which one are we glad was retired first? Does Faust count as a game element?
No. No, though you're right.
Yeah, well, I'm right. I'm happy Faust is gone, but no, he's not a game element. Oh, geez, what am I?
I assume we're talking like relics, equipment.
Oh yeah. Something in the feat cards. I'm so sorry. I you know what? And it's not that feat cards as an idea were great, which they were eventually made obsolete by special powers. But it was the stacking that bothered me, where you had like multiple protecteds on characters, or what was it? Protected and repulsor wave, or I don't know, indomitable or whatever. Yeah. Like protected was my nightmare. I hated that goddamn ID or that feat card so much.
Right.
Just screwed up the pace of the game. So yeah, feat cards because protected. That's the game element I'm glad. And you know what? I'm going to pack battlefield conditions in with those.
Yeah, because I think that kind of goes without saying. Everybody kind of realizes battlefield conditions are glad they're gone. I mean, this is a hard question to answer because two things come to mind for opposite reasons. One is event dials, because we never
used them anyway.
They were never useful in the first place. Like people had to like mutually agree to use them or something. It was a strange mechanic from the get-go, and it's just better that they're not there anymore. But honestly, the one that I think more is impactful upon the game that I'm glad is gone would be entities and possessors. I mean, we never know. Maybe there'll be more to come at some point. But I really didn't like the fact that we were free powers and stat boosts for absolutely anybody. It made for some pretty silly combinations that were never intended in the first place, and just really super tired of everybody having impervious. I think that gets real old at a certain point.
Yeah, absolutely. Amber, the darkness.
I agree with both of your guys. Feat cards, battlefield conditions, possessors. I'm gonna throw in there now. It wasn't really an add-on thing, more as a game mechanic. I am still to this day very, very happy that they got rid of soaring. Soaring was my nightmare.
Yeah. Soaring's dumb.
What characters use soaring? Oh yeah, hypersonic. That's it.
I hated soaring characters because I almost always played close combat guys.
Yeah.
So like, it would actually stop my games because you cannot close combat somebody who is soaring. So I could play up against an entire team of flyers. They could just soar, and then I am stuck getting shot for the rest of the game. Like I could not play anymore.
I also think back when you said event dials, I was thinking that's kind of the same logic I used when I said F the Thanagarian on our episode, where it's like, what are you happy to see? Go for rotation.
Right.
Thanagarian, mostly because I was out of ideas on that one. Which one do you wish was still in play though? I think we answered something that's similar to this on the way in, but
I don't know.
If I was to say one, all right, hate me all you want. I loved the Book of the Skulls because it gave it gave dudes that I needed to have move and attack, and it gave me the attack values I needed to sometimes hit.
I can't agree with you there.
Well, I know you can't agree with me. That's
the
fine.
attack values were insane with the Book of the Skulls. It was a silly time.
Yeah, and I was still capable of missing during this silly time.
We all were, but the numbers game just got so thrown off. Things we wish are back. I don't know. It seems like every anytime something cycles out, I breathe a sigh of relief. I'm like, no more of that. We have too much of everything.
I figured the round table would be one for you.
Yeah, like, we're just talking about a single piece. I do kind of miss the round table. What I really liked about the round table was the fact that there were so many different ways to build it, and it was such a dynamic resource. I like the fact that you could build it to try to replace all your characters. You can do it to try to get roll random inspirations. You could try to aim to get to Click 2. You could aim to get to Click 3. There's a number of different approaches that you could do with it.
Yeah.
I thought it was the most fun, balanced, and interesting of the resources, and so I liked it from that perspective. But I'm also, like, I don't need more ID shenanigans in the game. So it was the best for what it was, but I don't think that I am happy that it's gone to some extent, just because I don't need more ID stuff. I'll be happy when the age of IDs is eventually over, if it ever does end. At the very least, it goes into greater decline. I don't know, Amber, what do you think?
Like, I really enjoyed the Book of the Skull, mostly because I could play whatever team I wanted and it could still be viable because it gave everybody move and attack and some extra attack power. So, like, I could play all my favorite characters and still compete. That's what I liked the most about it. But I understand, like, having it go was a good thing too. I'm also very happy to be in a time of HeroClix where there are no resources. I'm incredibly happy about that because it just got to be way too much. But, like, I miss the Book of the Skull and I miss the Phoenix Force, but I feel like other ones just really kind of ruined, alright, I'm done with resources kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I'm really having a hard time with it. There's a few pieces that fall into that category. Like, I miss Nighthawk Prime, personally. In this age of...
Right now, the Nighthawk Prime would be a godsend.
Right? In this age of extreme stat modifications, then I really kind of wish that he was out there. Just not that I would play him a lot, but just his mere presence would kind of force you to consider the way in which you're building your teams, and the excess that we are currently in the midst of, you know?
Speaking of which, that's a good way to segue into our next little portion here.
It would be, except that we...
except I mentioned that we segued.
We said one.
Oh, we have one more thing. Okay, what do you want to see?
What mechanic would we like to see in the future?
Yeah. I mean, jeez. I don't have my game design brain on right now, but I want to see something very specific for the pro wrestlers. I want to see the run-in.
Well, it's actually kind of funny that you say that, because I'm going to say something very similar, which, you know, you mentioned, like, do I miss the round table? The thing that I miss most is the I'm better suited for these foes thing.
Yeah.
I like any opportunity to try to swap out a character for somebody on your sideline through some mechanic. I don't think it should be quite as wide open as just, you know, replace any character with any other character of equal or less points. You know, you pay 5 points for that and you just do it whenever you want. I think that would be a bit much. But well, I don't know, maybe it wouldn't be, because I like the idea of having a bit more versatility, and it does in fact it's an interesting thing, the way that your pairing is so, especially now, the pairings sometimes essentially determine the outcome, because there are so many extreme versions of archetypes. We were talking about this a bit off camera before, about, like, the one-man army is viable. There's a viable version of a swarm. There's a viable version of a multi-attacker. There's a viable version of a POG generation army. But individual ones really stymie the others to such an extreme extent that in some ways, what your pairing is more important than how you play it, and who wins map roll is more important than what happens when you put your pieces on the map. And I think it would be interesting to see the way that it can get shaken up if there was a certain amount of customization permissible for your team based upon your sideline, so that if there was some mechanic whereby you could retool your team a little bit for the match in question, it would open up a new world of possibility. And I think as long as you were conservative about how you design that mechanic, I don't think that it is by its nature intrinsically a broken type thing. I think that there's potential there. So I would trust it to people who are actual designers and, like, know these things better than I do.
Amber.
I got nothing on this. I don't know if there's anything I want to see come back or show up new. I got no ideas for it.
I'm interested to see what they decide to do with the gauntlet this time around.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah, it will be interesting.
All right, now we can actually properly segue
All right.
into an article that recently appeared on MajesticCCG.com. And it's not just a sponsor plug. This is actually a very interesting topic brought up by...
And a sponsor block.
And it's well, I mean, why not?
You mentioned it.
Check them out at MajesticCCG.com/Apex-Insiders, $3 a month. Access to some really great brains in the game of HeroClix.
Seriously, like, how is it not worth $3 a month?
I don't know.
That's the cost of a booster over the course of like half a year.
Yeah. But with that said, Patrick kind of brought up a bit of a point. Tom, how about you? I think you're the most invested in it, so give us the...
Just raise that a little bit so you see the mirror. Thank you.
Sorry.
We're good.
I'm blocking the
We're
mirror
good.
with
We're
this.
good. I don't change the set off. As a matter of principle.
Yeah. So I think you were really gung-ho to talk about this, so I'm going to let you start and just kind of introduce the idea of the article.
Sure, and admittedly, it's been a few days, so correct me if I get any of the details wrong. But essentially, and you should go and check this article out yourself. In fact, I believe this is a free article.
Yeah.
And so, even if you're not an insider, which you should be, you can still go and read it, and perhaps it'll inspire you to become one, because I think it's really well written. But it is a bit of a retrospect. He at least begins it with a retrospective to a point in the history of the metagame of HeroClix that was pretty broken. It's a period that a lot of us remember, although I don't know how many of us were playing competitive at the time. But in the days when the team bases were first introduced and before they were nerfed and ultimately phased out, where they were just massively powerful, massively overpowered, really, and they could cross the whole map basically and attack in the first turn, such that if you won your map roll, you were pretty much guaranteed to get the first strike, and the first strike would be so overwhelming that it would almost always win. And if you were not winning map, the best you could hope for is to survive. You know, maybe you got some rollouts and you hope they worked, or you just try to survive the initial onslaught, so that you could then do a counter assault that would probably win you the game. And then there were a few other archetypes like that, like the Bat Belt and Ghost Rider, Heroes for Hire interaction, that again was the same type of idea. You just basically cross the board and destroy the entire team in one go, or hope that you don't die so that you get the opportunity to do the same. And it was a very stale time in the game, and there was little room for innovation or interesting builds, because these were just such suffocatingly overpowered build archetypes that were established and would basically win everything but an outlier case. By design, there was little opportunity for individuality within design or player skill, if I'm being blunt, in the determining outcomes. It was very much more a question of what team did you happen to play, how well is the pair against the thing that's across the map, and did you win your map rolls so that you are the one who's attacking on turn 2 as opposed to being attacked on turn 2. And he goes on to explain that although the current HeroClix environment is not in exactly the same place, it has many of the same hallmarks that certain major team constructions and team builds. Again, they have the ability to attack right away. They can attack so many times that no matter what your archetype is, whether it's something that just is an overwhelming assault that cannot be denied, or it's a don't die team that cannot be killed, there is precious little, or it's like a sheer retaliation team where you don't dare make an attack, or whatever it is. Like, there are certain archetypes that can be stacked up to such an extent that it puts us in the same sort of stale place, where a few specific archetypes are essentially unbeatable, and it's just a question of which one you happen to be paired against, so that your pairing and your map roll wind up having much more of an important impact on the outcome of the game than any of your own investment of time or effort or intelligent deployment. And so he is arguing that it's time for a change, and retirement will be maybe some help, but the fact that it got to this point at all is indicative of a certain design trend, which he would hope is curbed moving forward, so as to be more engaging for players and give more opportunities.
Absolutely. That's a good rundown of the article. And I want to kind of we'll share our thoughts. I mostly agree with a lot of what he's saying.
Yeah.
Like, especially when you think about teams like the Hawkeye that shows up and the Vulture that shows up, and yeah, they have to consistently hit, but there's so many tools that they have right now that can kind of adjust that, or you get the one-man Unimines, or kind of just whatever they are, and we get stuck in this power level that kind of occurs unnaturally, naturally, however you want to look at it, and the design space is kind of, it either misses it or the players are better than the designers. It's kind of hard to say. Of course, with every one of these articles and this kind of idea making that comes with it, there's a hard lesson, a hard pill to swallow that comes with it.
Right.
Is that, and this happened around the time that Nick Fury started to show up, and then everything after Nick Fury for a while, is there was a lot of what seemed like very undertuned, underpowered characters.
Right.
And then we get into this point where, well, why does nothing seem to be strong except for a couple figures here and there? And then rotation hits. It's like, oh, it's because the power level was too high here. So the danger pill to swallow right now is where we are right now. If design starts here, and let's say it feels like Earth X is a good start on this, where nothing is like broken, right? Nothing in Earth X. Oh, I mean, there's parts that make things broken, but actually, you know what? This Vulture. Who am I kidding?
Like Vulture is a bad example. Earth X Cap and the interaction with the Hulks.
Yeah.
That's going to survive. Like Hawkeye may go away, but that particular Avengers interaction will survive afterwards.
I guess where I'm getting at though is eventually
Daredevils, another don't die.
What will eventually end up happening is, if they fix this in design, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take years of rotation for it to kind of show its face again. And we got to a really good place at one point where there was a lot of variation on team.
Yep.
Right? And while archetypes were doing vastly different things, but
whether people like it or not, that was the heyday of the resources.
Yeah. I mean, the heyday of the battery, there was a time where it's like, oh my god, there's so many different teams. I mean, granted, Kyle Rayner was a strong figure, but that was also not a hard to get figure. That was a figure by participation.
And it wasn't like half the field was playing it like they are Unimind. So
yeah.
It's. What do you think,
Amber? Your thoughts?
My thoughts are that I am falling asleep in the back seat.
I'm sorry, were we not keeping you awake, Amber? Were we boring you?
No, it's just I don't feel like I get enough experience out in the field to do this, because I looked at today, I played 5 different teams. Even though I played 2 technical mirror matches, they were still like significant enough, different enough from the team that I played that I could say that they were different teams, but they did sort of the same thing. So I can understand where Patrick was coming from with like the main like architects, where it's like, even though things aren't like the carbon copy teams like they used to be, where you were either playing Justice League or Heroes for Hire or you were dead.
Right.
It's still like, okay, grab your equipment, Alpha Strike.
Yeah.
Grab your equipment, don't die.
You can find a few different ways into the same.
Yeah, you're still
hole.
Even if you are playing something completely different, you're still essentially playing the same team. So, but I don't know. I still feel like I saw enough different things out there. But if I look at it, I mean, even like the 5 games I played today, I played a whale swarm, so it's basically just a swarm team.
Yeah.
I played against a Hawkeye team, so that was a giant girl Hawkeye swarm. Again, swarm, Alpha Strike swarm. I played against 2 Starro teams that, even though they were different than me, it was still the, like, and they were both actually more aggressive versions of the Starro team. And then I played against full pointed Unimind. So
the fact that the things will cycle out, and over time, little by little, you show improvement, and that is true from a dial design perspective. But there is another dimension that could be considered here, which is that the rules are forever changing in this game, and there is a dimension of this that says, is there anything in the rules that is contributing to an exploitative environment? Because, like Pat did point out, that the old first turn immunity was that if you had taken any action whatsoever, you were vulnerable.
Yep.
And nowadays, since that's no longer true, now it's about a question of, like, have you left your starting area as yet? Then whoever goes first can just equip all their special objects and have no consequence for doing so, because it doesn't put them in any jeopardy. In fact, if you play it right, potentially you can both equip your objects and steal or destroy some objects of your opponent all in the same go, with no opportunity for reprisal, because you're protected by your immunity. And his point was, maybe, like, is it worth reconsidering? Would it be worth considering whether or not that is the best way to handle immunity? And so it's one dimension. It's one thing that bears consideration. I'm not going to throw my money behind any particular approach, but I think it is the type of question that is a valid one to ask, because it's the other thing you can do with that, right? And another map bonuses are another thing that they've limited your theme probs at 5. It's locked. It can't go any higher. Right. I wonder what would happen if you did the same thing for theme team bonuses to map roll.
So maximum +5 on that,
for example.
Okay.
Like that would sort of change the spammy nature of some of the teams that are basically just stacking their theme prob, or stacking their map bonus like pancakes, to the point where they essentially can't lose except in a mirror match. It would be less viable. You'd see less. Presumably, you would see less giant girl spam, because there would be less advantage to doing it that way.
Less need for it.
And a little bit more of the natural swing of dice rolling within the map initiative thing would rear its head, so you can't just count on winning map.
Yeah.
I mean, it's another thing that it's not like they have to do it, but it's worth consideration. That is something that could have effect pretty much right away, and might help curb some of the spamminess of some of the builds.
Yeah, absolutely. As well, I feel, going to rules and whatnot, they might need to start kind of controlling and specifying how frequently a thing should be triggering. Like, for instance, we have the vulture situation.
Yeah, no cost versus free,
yeah. Because, like, what ends up happening with the vulture, because you could possibly give the vulture flurry, and I think that is something where you have a character who has a close combat effect, or is a close combat focused character, can possibly pull a thing off. They have to account for the possibility of that thing, whatever that is, getting that ability a second time, right? And I feel like that got missed. Possibly, like, nobody knew that the octopus arms were coming.
I guess, but I would say that even though the vulture is probably more damaging in an overall setting on certain types of teams, I would say that the Hulk Exospecs interaction is even worse, at least in principle. Since that suddenly allows him to, like, triple attack. Yeah. It's insane.
And, like, this is one of those things coming from as many games as I've played. A lot of times when most games see stuff like this, they kind of specify a once per turn, or find some kind of limiting factor that only allows it once per turn, where, if you can find a way around that particular thing, then okay, we can make that work. And in the case of the movement, they keep making effects that give us extra movement. And, with the Hulk, it's like, okay, well, if I can... And they always give it to Avengers.
Yeah.
Like, very specific, like, Avengers, here's some extra movement. It's... Like, I mean, we kind of have to start looking at that and say, okay, maybe we got to look at the Avengers and stop giving them so many extra movement effects if you're going to give them a lot of effects in the game. It's a weird design space that they kind of found themselves in this case.
Right. And there are other things that you could do. Like, if you just wanted, like, brainstorm, you could easily sit and think of things. Like, would you want to add some kind of restrictions on your special objects such that they can't total a total value that is greater than X, Y, or Z, or whatever? Yeah, what's that? Fear. defeats had that.
Defeats had that, where it's like no more than 10% of your team.
Right. And like you can imagine doing something like that. You can imagine that you make equippings a once per round thing, globally speaking.
Yep.
Which would also change how people would approach those types of things. And like, it's not so much that I'm suggesting it, but it is certainly, these are the types of conversations that I don't know for sure whether they're being had or not.
Yeah.
There's no way for us to really know on the ground what sort of conversations are happening behind the scenes. And as long as the only thing that we can do, I think, in good faith, is be having the conversation within ourselves, not in an angry way and not in an aggressive manner, but in hopefully a sort of a productive and constructive manner, because I think we still ultimately enjoy the game. It's still a big net positive for us. And thus we would just like for it to be good going forward. And if everybody's having those conversations, sooner or later trends start to emerge, and if people are paying attention to those trends, then maybe there's the opportunity to make improvements.
Yeah. Some of the best criticisms come from the people who really love the game. And like the things that we get, we're really passionate about when it comes to things we feel need to be changed, are just, for the most part, in general, things we want to make the game better. Yeah. Right? And we're not angry at Wizkids or anything like that. Because one thing I feel like when we talk about what kind of conversation is going to be had, if I'm looking at the conversations based on the results, I feel like they're not looking at wackos like us who are just like, how can I make this impossibly good? You know what I mean? And we're the players with that mindset. But then those people are very dangerous game designers,
right?
Too.
Well, at least I assume that they're trying.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Don't get me wrong. They have people who they have the input to. But yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I agree. Yeah.
But overall, like, I kind of get where Patrick's coming from.
Yeah.
It can get rough when you look at everybody's in that theme team arms race to get the map roll. Everybody's in that extra state to maximize getting across the board and killing everything all at once. I mean, that's kind of what we're all doing when it comes to meta play. I mean,
well, the funny thing is that Patrick is not. What I like about the fact that it's written by Pat.
This is a two-time world champ.
Well, he's got a few. Well, he's got his bona fides for sure. Like he's won everything, but he's not a super active player. He does play. Like his investment in the game largely, like he runs a store. It is by no means not in his best interest that everybody wants to have 15 giant girls.
Yeah.
When everybody wants to have 10 Flora Colossuses, then as somebody who sells Hero Clix, that's a boom time.
Yeah.
So he's not. He's coming out in a position that is not about being butthurt because he's a player who's angry about who's butthurt again.
I love something about the way Tom says butthurt.
Yeah. It's like buttered. So he's not speaking as someone who's just like an angry player who's had some bad play experiences, and he's not speaking as someone who the current state of HeroClix is hurting his business. He's speaking as somebody who's kind of a concerned HeroClix citizen who doesn't like the way the wind is blowing, and that's fine. He also doesn't take the tone of sort of a lot of judgment or a lot of anger or a lot of self-righteousness. He's just sort of tossing out some concerns for consideration, and I think that they're good concerns to be considered.
Absolutely. All right, is there anything else we want to cover before we sort of wrap this up?
That's good with me.
All right, I'm pretty good. Amber, what about you? Are you officially asleep yet?
No, I'm good.
I'm good, she says in the back. I also just want to point out that, Tom won a tournament a little while ago at the same venue that ran New York States. Got himself a t-shirt.
Yeah, man.
Another case of the rich getting richer. Have a good night, everybody.